Hi everybody and welcome to Shane's Minis. In this video today I'm going to show you how to make a pond. So let's get started. So what we need to make the pond? Well, we need some sort of basic material. In this case I'm going to use some foam board. We've got some air drying clay. In this case it's DAS, and also I've got some water on hand just to help smooth the clay out. You'll also need a craft knife, and I use this 2-part epoxy resin. I found this at my local pound shop, and it works really quite well. So that's everything we need to get started. So I'll show you how to begin. So the first thing we need to do is take our craft knife and cut out a rough shape for the pond from our foam board. So there's our rough pond shape. I'm now going to take the knife, run it along at an angle and just bevel the edges. Just like that. So once you have your edges nice and beveled, it's time to start doing the structure of the pond itself. And this is where we will use our modelling clay. So for this stage, what we need to do is just rip a bit of the clay off, roll it into a sausage shape, and then start to spread it around the edges of the pond, like so. So once you have the rough shape of the pond laid out, this is where you can use some water just to smooth around the edges and make it look a bit more natural. So here it's just ordinary tap water. Get a bit on the end of your fingers and then just start smoothing around the edges of the clay just to round them off, and as I said, make it look a bit more natural. And here we have the pond so far with the edges smoothed out. Now we just need to wait for the clay to dry fully before we carry on with this project. So while we wait for the clay to dry for the main part of the pond, I thought I'd show you how to make some reeds to go in the pond. So for this you'll need a hot glue gun. You'll also need something to represent your reeds. I use this is just a sample of a doormat that I bought offline for about 99p. So I just use small strands of this, a pair of scissors, and then some greaseproof paper just to put them on so they don't stick to anything, so you can easily remove them from the paper. So to start with, make sure that your glue gun is nice and warm and it's ready to use. Squeeze out a small blob of hot glue onto the paper. Don't worry about the stringy bits, we'll just cut them off once it's dried. Take your matting and your scissors, cut a small amount of the matting off. Probably about that sort of amount. If the camera will focus, there we go. And then pop it into the hot glue and just hold it until it sticks. So when it's to dry, we'll blow off all the excess and give them a trim just to make them look a bit better. And I'll show you when I've done a few more. So these are our little reed tufts. They've been hot glued down onto the greaseproof paper. The next step would be to take them off, paint the bottom of them brown, and then they are ready for use. You can also trim any bits that you don't like, so this one might be a bit thick. Just trim a few bits off and just get it looking how you like. It's dead easy to do, and I think they're really effective. So the next thing that we would do is to add a bit of paint and some texture to the pond. So as you can see, this one, it's still drying, so I'm going to use this one that I started doing earlier. All I've done with this is sprinkle a bit of sand and PVA all over, and then base coats it with a brown house paint, and then we are now ready to start adding some detail. So I'm going to start by painting the bottom of the pond, just in the middle here, using a dark brown. In this case I'll use burnt umber. So once the dark brown in the middle of the pond has dried, the next step is to pick out the little stones and sand that we put in as our texture, and for this I'm going to use a light grey paint. Now this dry brush only needs to be very light. We just need to pick them out just a little bit, just so they'll be visible through the water effect we're using, and just give it a bit more interest. So hopefully you can see there that the stones have been picked out with the light grey paint. So the next thing we're going to do is apply some flock to the pond. So all we need again is some PVA glue, and then I've got my my meadow green flock, my light green and my dark green flock. So I'll just get rid of this glue, bit of water, and I'm just going to paint this all around the edge of the pond. And now as you can see, it's covered in PVA glue, so the next stage is to start putting some flock on. So here's the pond all flocked up and nearly ready to go. So the last thing before we do the water effect is I'm going to add in 2 of the little tufts I made earlier with the hot glue gun. I'm just going to PVA glue them into place now. And there we go, almost ready to add the water effects. Okay, so for the final part of this pond build, you'll need your 2-part epoxy resin or whatever water effect that you're going to use, a small pot to put it in, a few drops of wash just to make the water appear a bit more dirty rather than being crystal clear, and a stick to stir it with. So pop the end off the epoxy resin and then just squeeze a little bit into the pot. There we go. So see how we get on with that for now. I'll pop the lid back on. Right way round. Couple of squirts of the wash, and then give it a good stir. And then we want to start pouring this into the pond. And there we have it. There is the epoxy resin in the pond. So just wait for that to dry and cure, and I'll show you the finished result. So this is the finished pond after the resin has cured for a couple of hours. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time on Shane's Minis.